So I definitely did not intend for this to come out as a rainbow look, but we're gonna roll with it. Hello everybody, welcome back. I am very excited today to show off this grungy rainbow dream that I have on my eyes and review the Melt Cosmetics AMOR Y Mariposas palette today. Quick note, this is not an eyeshadow palette, it is a pressed pigment palette, which means that essentially half of these shades are not fit for the eye area, but don't tell me what to do. So this is what the palette looks like. It's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. There's so many different shades in here. This is my grungy rainbow dream, like actually my grungy rainbow dream. I am really not much for a rainbow palette, but if I were to get a rainbow palette, this was the one that I wanted. I don't actually have a rainbow palette in my collection, so this was kind of the perfect addition because it's dark, it's grungy, it's beautiful. As you can see on my eyes today, I created a bit of a grungy rainbow. So it's like a jewel toned rainbow. That's like the best I can say. It's a jewel toned rainbow and it's everything that I wanted. The top two rows are safe for the eyes. The bottom two rows, these deep, rich reds, pinks, and purples, are supposedly not FDA approved or Melt Cosmetics approved for use around the eye area. They really stepped it up with their formula for this palette, like especially their shimmers. They are this soft, blendable, gorgeous formula. Even their mattes don't seem as dry as they usually do. I believe this palette was made in Italy as opposed to their other palettes that are made in the USA. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but this palette really is a step up from their usual formula. I think it is the best that they've ever done, especially when it comes to their shimmers. As with all the rest of the Melt palettes, it is very pigmented, like very, very, very pigmented. So a word of caution, if you're gonna go in with this with a heavy hand, it's real pigmented, so go in lightly. One thing to note is that the front artwork of this palette was created by a artist named Gustavo Rimada, I think is his name. Yes, Gustavo Rimada is the name of the artist who created the front cover of this palette, and it is stunning. If you can see here, there's not only these beautiful butterflies and flowers on the back, there's also hummingbirds, and they kind of look like thorns. Like if you look at them, at first glance, I thought these were like thorns, but they're actually hummingbirds. And the signification of the butterflies and hummingbirds are that these are meant to be like the significance of the souls of people that you've lost, giving you a sign that they're kind of still with you. At least that's what my understanding was. And that's kind of the theme of this collection, is grief and loss, and them giving you signs, like people that you've lost, giving you signs that they're still with us and they're still kind of in your life somehow. And I thought that was really beautiful. So I've lost two people this year, my dog and my uncle I've lost this year. So having the theming of this palette be surrounding grief was very significant to me, and I felt like this was the perfect collection for them to launch this year, and I was very happy to be able to review this. But other than the beautiful artwork, let's take a look at the packaging that it came in. This is the box that it came in. It's got like a red felt on the inside. I could have done without the red felt because when I originally took the palette out of the packaging, it had a bunch of these like little microfiber, like red microfibers, like basically all over it. So I had to kind of go in and wipe it up and clean it. So I could have done without the felt on the inside if it was gonna leave all those microplastics or microfibers on the palette, so I'd have to clean up later. Could have done without, but it is pretty. It's a nice embellishment onto the packaging. Sorry, I had to turn on my artificial light because it's getting dark outside. The back of the palette looks like this, more butterflies. And then again, there we go with the inside of the package. A lot of them have these like beautiful butterfly imprints on the shades. I think all of the mattes do. They have them, and they actually like stick up quite a bit, so those little embossings are going to be in there for a long time. And then the mirror, if you can see, has these like pretty butterflies around the edges of it. This palette is just stunning. It is absolutely just a sight to behold. It is beautiful. The palette is not cheap. It does retail for 92 Canadian dollars. I don't know how much it is. I think it's like 70 something in American, but it is 92 Canadian dollars. They do carry this at Sephora. And for me, this was well worth it because it is really beautiful. I really love it. It is my grungy rainbow dream, and as of yet I don't have a rainbow palette in my collection, so this was a great addition to my current collection. And I was really excited with the looks that I created using this. I felt more inspired and creative than I have in a long time playing with a palette. So I was very happy to have been able to play with this. And I guess let's get into the 3 looks. So first I'm going in with the shade Te Adoro, and I'm focusing that above my crease, and I'm kind of creating a line along the crease and then winging it out at the end. And I'm doing that on a large blending brush. Next, on a small blending brush, I'm taking the shade Nueva Vida, and I'm focusing that more concentrated, basically along the same line that I took Te Adoro. It's just a little bit more concentrated in the center of where we put Te Adoro. But we're basically creating the same shape, just a little bit more concentrated. Next, on a tapered blending brush, I'm using my MAC 217S. I'm taking that shade Guamuchil on the inner and outer corners of my lid space. I'm really just packing that in, trying to get that color as just intense as possible. Next, going into the bottom lash line, I'm taking that shade Guamuchil again on that same tapered blending brush, and I'm packing that into the outer corner and kind of smoking it outwards. Next, for the shimmers, I'm going in with the shade Mesquite and placing that with a finger just in the center of my lid space, just finishing up that halo on the top eyelid. Then going back into the shade Mesquite, I'm taking a little bit of that just on a smaller brush, and I'm placing that in the inner portion of the bottom lash line. Then for the inner corner, I'm taking the shade Tequila on just a very small brush, and I'm packing that into the inner corner. I'm also going to take a little bit of that shade Tequila, and I'm placing that on the brow bone using that same small brush. Now I like this look as is, but I'm actually just going to step it up a notch by taking an angled liner brush, and I'm basically just lining the underside of the red that we put just above the crease. Just creating a little bit of a graphic liner look. This palette is absolutely perfect for it just because of how pigmented these shades are. Then I'm going in with a couple of ColourPop Creme Gel liners in my bottom waterline. I'm taking the shade Spare Time and Marigold. I'm doing Spare Time in the outer corner and Marigold in the inner portion. Just to bring the look together, I'm taking a little bit more of that shade Guamuchil on that same tapered blending brush I used before, and I'm placing a little bit more of that in the outer portion of my top lid space and just smoking it out towards the red, just so that the shape of the two colors are a bit more cohesive. Then finishing up the look with some blush and lipstick. This is the finished first look. First, on a tapered blending brush, this is my Luxie 205, I'm taking the shade Abuelita, and I'm focusing that in the outer portion of my lid space. I'm bringing and buffing that up towards my brow bone. Next, just to deepen that out a little bit, I'm taking the shade Perla, that's on a MAC 217S, and I'm patting that just into the outer corner, a bit more concentrated than we did with that shade Abuelita, but basically just in the same place in that outer portion of the lid space and blending it up and towards the brow bone. On that same tapered blending brush that we used before with the shade Abuelita, I'm taking a little bit more of that shade into the bottom lash line and really buffing that out. Next, with a smaller blending brush, this is my Luxie 237. I'm taking the shade Maria And focusing that even more in that outer corner, I'm putting that just in the very outer corner of my lid space and blending it up and out, almost winging it towards my brow bone. I'm taking the shade Perla on that MAC brush again, and I'm focusing that a little bit more concentrated in the outer portion of my bottom lash line. And finally, on that small tapered blending brush, I'm taking the shade Maria and focusing this even more in the outer corner of my lower lash line. Next, using my Morphe M441, I'm taking the shade Cariño, and I'm focusing that in the inner portion of my lid space. And I'm blending that up and into the crease as well. Next, just on my finger, I'm taking the shade Sagrado, and I'm placing that pretty much all over my lid space. Then on a small pencil brush, this is one from NYX, I'm taking the shade Michoacan, this really deep, rich teal blue-green, and I'm going to take that in the inner portion of my lid and just line the inner portion of the crease above where we put Sagrado. Going back into the bottom lash line, I'm taking a little bit of Sagrado, and I'm just going to place that in the inner portion of the lower lash line. Then finally, for my highlight, I'm taking the shade Tequila, and I'm placing that in the inner corner. Finishing up the look with some blush, mascara, and lipstick. This is the second look completed using the Melt Cosmetics AMOR Y MARIPOSAS palette. Starting with the shade Mensaje, I took that on a big fluffy brush. I used my Luxie 205 tapered blending brush, and I'm placing that just above the crease in the outer portion of my eyelid and blending that up and towards my brow bone. Next, on my Morphe M441 brush, I'm taking the shade Cariño, blending that up and towards Mensaje. Then going in with that same brush and the shade Sentimientos, I'm deepening out that green color just a bit in the outer corner, and I'm taking that and I'm winging that out towards my brow bone. I had to go back in and clean it up just a little bit because I went a little bit too hard with these pigments. They are super pigmented, so be super careful with them. I'm going in with a bit of that shade Mensaje on my big blending brush, just in the inner portion of my lid space as well. Then moving into the inner corner, I'm taking the shade Nube, and I'm creating a bit of a reverse smoky eye here with this color, placing that in the inner corner and smoking it up towards Mensaje and down along the inner corner of the bottom lash line. I'm going to go in and deepen that up a little bit with the shade Charo, just in the very inner corner. I'm taking some of that shade Mensaje all along my bottom lash line as well and smoking that out. Then going in with shimmers, I'm taking the shade Michoacan and placing that with a brush just on my outer corner of my top lid space. Then in the center of my lid space, I'm taking the shade Mariposa and placing that just with a finger all over the center of my lid space. Taking a little bit of that Mariposa shade in the inner corner of my bottom lash line. I don't really like how disconnected Mariposa looks with the other colors, so I'm taking a little bit of Abrazos just on another tapered blending brush, and I'm placing that over where we put Mensaje in the inner portion of my lid space, just above the crease, above where we put Mariposa. Going into the bottom lash line, I'm taking that shade Michoacan again, just on a brush. Lastly, I took a little bit more of that shade Sentimientos, that green, back into the outer corner, and I blew that out just a little bit more. Next, I'm going into the inner corner with the shade Tequila, placing a little bit of that tequila shade on my brow bone as well. I don't quite like how that shade Tequila stands out in the inner corner, so I'm taking a little bit more of Charo just over top of where we put Tequila. Then to finish off the look, I added eyeliner in the bottom waterline and on the top eyelid, just added a wing to finish up the look. And that is the third and final look completed using the Amor Y Mariposas palette. Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed those 3 looks. As you can see, I went very colorful with them. I know there are some neutrals in the palette, but I really wanted to just put as much color on my eyelids as possible and really test out the breadth of this palette and what it could do. And it really can do a lot. Like, I was very impressed with it. The pigmentation of the shades was amazing. The pigmentation of the shimmers and just how bright and beautiful they were, fantastic. Best shimmer formula that I think Melt has ever done. I was very impressed with it. Is this the best palette Melt has ever done? It's close, it's close. It's not quite at the level of the Amor Eterno collection, but it's, I would say, right underneath that. The quality of the shadows is a step up from all of their other eyeshadows that I've tried, 100%. So just from that, I believe it's the best palette they've ever done, just quality-wise. The usability of the shades was a little bit better, I found, than their previous palettes as well, and I don't know if that just comes with the formula change, but their shadows in this palette are a lot more usable and blendable than they have been previously in other palettes. So if you were staying away from Melt Cosmetics' formula because it's not very usable, this one is a lot better. It is still dark, it is still grungy, it is still very pigmented, but it's more usable and more blendable than a lot of their other shadow palettes have been. And again, I reiterated, it's a pigment palette. The second 2 rows of the palette are not meant to be used around the eyes, but no one tells me what to do. I will say that I did not get any staining on my eyes from using any of these shades, but I did get some minor staining on my arm when I did like the big swatch of every shade. Mostly just with the greens up at the top here. My skin is, for some reason, quite sensitive to green pigments, but nothing for the red. The red was fine. Like, all of the shades that they say to be careful with that don't belong around the eyes, like, I didn't have any issues with. The green just sometimes stains my skin for whatever reason. All in all, I loved this palette. I thought it was beautiful. I had a lot of fun playing with it. I had never intended to make a rainbow look using it, but I guess that's the point of the palette. It's a grungy rainbow. Why not? But that's it for this review today. I hope that this inspired you. Thank you for hanging out with me today, as always, and I will see you in the next video.